So we're all here because, we have a very cool and unique opportunity to reimagine how work is done and what that means for our organizations and for the industry at large. And so this lovely group of ladies is going to talk about what that means for their organization. So we'll start just with a quick introduction. So I'm Ingrid Fenn, and I own a management consulting firm called SIREAS. And Relina?
Thank you, Ingrid. Really quick, I want to wish everybody a happy Diwali. This is the largest Indian festival. Over 1 billion people celebrated. I'm very excited to be here with this panel. I'm Relina Bulchandani. I lead global real estate and workplace services at Salesforce. And when I was invited to this panel, it took me a while to calibrate because it was a big holiday, but I'm very happy to be here amongst my peers. And a little bit about me. I've spent a lot of time at Google and Cisco and other tech companies, but I really believe we have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity ahead of us around the future of work. I was here last year, and at lunch today, we were talking about how there's so much more confidence this year in the room. And last year, folks were like, we don't know what's going on. And we still don't know everything, but I think amongst us, the answers are here. And it's a really super exciting time to be at the table, corporate real estate, solving for the future work. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Alana Collins. I head real estate and workplace for Zoom. I also manage employee health and safety as well. And Diwali was a big day for us. It was the biggest turnout that we've had since we opened our offices. So we had all globally, we did an entire party and food and dancing and henna and all sorts of stuff. It was a big turnout. So we were pleased about that. So yes, as I said, I oversee a global footprint and have a team of about 18 workplace professionals. And yeah, I'm happy to be here to talk about what we're working on.
Hi everybody, I'm Tracy Hawkins. I'm VP of Real Estate and Work Transformation at a very boring company where nothing ever happens. And we're never at the news. I'm at Twitter. Don't ask me the question that everyone's asking me at the moment. If you see me at 80s night tonight, because you might get a real answer. Very, very excited to be here. I just want to correct one thing for Jason, because Jason was talking about if you want to put things out on social media, and he mentioned this company called Instagram, which I have never heard of. So I just want to correct him that it's Twitter where you want to be putting it, and yes, hashtag workspaces. So very excited to be up here with these awesome women, and especially the one who's rocking the 80s.
Yeah. Thank you. First, I want to say thanks to Jason and the facilities team, not only for doing a great job with the event, but for, giving into our whim to have more comfortable seats and wine during our session. So they pulled it together really quickly. Thank you guys. And cheers to the facilities organization.
Yeah.
So,
Cheers.
And I'm Terry Johnson. I'm Vice President of Real Estate Facilities, Environmental Health and Safety for Roche Molecular Solutions, which is an arm within the diagnostics organization of Roche. And first time here, very excited to share with all of you, and also very happy that you have drinks. I asked for shots for everybody, but it didn't happen.
Great. Thank you. So Alana, we'll start with you. How is your firm thinking about the future of work and balancing between the hybrid solution in the office, remote work, and really how is that changing how you think about the future strategy of your portfolio?
Yeah, so that's the million-dollar question, right? So I think we're a little over 5 months in from opening our offices. So I think we're still really leading with care and being very thoughtful. And I know everybody's heard experiment, but that is what we're doing. We want to make sure that we're hitting the mark. We want to make sure that everybody has a place where they can come, not only a physical space, but if they're working from home or in a hybrid, that they're able to do it in a productive way. And I think so right now we're experimenting. We're trying different things at the office. We're not expanding our real estate portfolio right now. We're taking a very conservative approach, and we're just going to maximize using our existing spaces that we have and kind of leverage those more just to learn from the people. As far as like the mix of hybrid and remote, we're pretty much a 75% remote company right now with 24% in office. On a hybrid, and there's no set schedule. And we're kind of letting the employee really design how they want to work, when they want to work, and what really works for them right now.
Great, thank you. And Tracy, how about Yes.
So what's interesting for us at Twitter is before, 18 months before the pandemic hit, we were talking about we want to grow we don't say remote because for us, remote infers that there's kind of a center where everything happens. And then if you're outside of that, then you're not part of it. So we say work from home, work from both, work from the office. And so 18 months before the pandemic was in the news, we were already thinking about how do we grow our folks working from home or working from other locations? And also, how do we keep people? Because, life circumstances change. Sometimes somebody might want to move from, say, New York to a place where we don't have an office. And we're losing great talent just because there wasn't a physical space for them to go sit in where we had meeting rooms and desks and all of that. So we were really pivoting our behavior a long time before and looking at ways to be able to both legally and from an operational perspective, be able to keep people and recruit outside of where we have physical space and physical offices. I think for us then, when the pandemic came along, we already had thought about some behaviors and different ways of working that we were already piloting and trying out. And it was more of an acceleration of the things we were already doing. So it wasn't so much of a shock, and it didn't feel like so much of a 180 for our employees because we'd already started talking about the new things that we were embracing. I think the important thing for our team as well is that we had a brand internally. So we were talking about these things with employees, and I truly feel like this is an important thing, that we are just honest with them. And we were saying, we want to keep you, we want to keep talent in the company, we want to attract new talent. And so this is an experiment, and we're piloting new ways of working. So our employees know that we are very much focused on choice, but also we continue to learn. So we haven't set any mandates out there. We're looking at how we use our spaces. We definitely have different areas set up in our offices that we have different spaces for different types of work. So focus work, collaborative, social, and then we just see how they use it, and we just continue to pivot.
Great, thank you. Relina, how about at Salesforce?
Very similar to my peers, pre-pandemic, definitely on a very strong kind of tower strategy, local offices strategy, and through the pandemic was definitely a moment where we started thinking about how are you successful from anywhere. Part of that time was our Slack acquisition, really strongly moving towards a digital headquarters, but always saying in real life matters. And also move forward on starting something called Trailblazer Ranch, which is essentially in Scotts Valley, California, a place for gathering, team connection, not just offsites, but really learning and co-creating with your employees. And now, coming out of the pandemic in this new time, we're really thinking about what are employees asking for us the most. Number one is team connection. So we're spending a lot of time being very thoughtful, very intentional, conducting deep listening with executives, with employees to figure out how do people come back and what we call, what are the jobs to be done in real life together. We know everyone was very successful through the pandemic, but we know there's some magic that happens when you come in together. So on one hand, we're thinking about a rich return on experience when you come in. On the other hand, we're trying to crack the why. So it's not, we don't believe in mandates. We don't think mandates are ever going to work for us as a company. But we want it to be compelling, and we want folks to really feel that I came in, I got my work done, I connected with the right folks. There was this rich return on experience, and it was easy and frictionless. So a couple of the things we're thinking about right now is, can you reserve a neighborhood on demand with the technology, with the services, with the catering, so it's super easy and frictionless. And then we monitor, we measure, we survey to understand, did that work? And we're doing it by product area. So we're moving away from one size fits all to be much more thoughtful. But fundamentally, I think the shift is into deep listening, experiment and learning, like a lot of my peers here. And then you have to monitor, measure, and serve up that data to executives to keep having this conversation and staying at the table.
Taking them for the journey, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, first, Roche's portfolio is made up of production, research and development labs, distribution, and office. So a lot of our workforce never left the workspace. What we did find is that the importance of speed and product development to address COVID was a learning experience, and we found we could do things a lot quicker than we anticipated or had done in the past. I think what's funny for me is when people talk about new ways of working and workplace strategy as if it's new, I just kind of laugh because it's not new. I mean, we've been talking about this for a decade. We, prior to the pandemic, had been doing surveys and visioning with employees and trying to understand what creates an inspiring environment where they can get the work done to be innovative and to deliver patient product. We were using sensors, and we knew that 50% of our office spaces were being utilized. And we were talking to the leaders and the businesses about what this meant, and we were showcasing and testing different workplaces or workspaces and environments. So we had these things already in the mix, and I think some of the challenges you mentioned, we are in the Bay Area, we're in Boston, we're in tough markets for talent, for life science, and for tech was already a challenge pre-pandemic. Of course, it's worse now. But so we were already looking at workplaces, we were surveying and seeing what people wanted. And we were going to open workspaces, office, no more enclosed offices. We were 8 desks per 10 people, unassigned seating, all of those things. So when the pandemic came, a lot of that hasn't changed. It has more visibility with some of the business leaders who had less interest because the impact is real to them. And the impact is real to that business in a lot of ways. So there's more attention and actually more people coming to us. But the strategy has been there and it's just highlighted now. Now, of course, our metrics are changing and some of the survey results are changing, which is interesting. So in the past, when we surveyed, people talked about the amenities and the game rooms and we want free food and all of these things that to us kind of were like, okay, yeah, we can deliver that, but is that really the game changer? And what we find out now surveying people is that free food doesn't come up on our surveys anymore. It is about choice. It is about the ability to be trusted and empowered to work in places that they can get the work done. And the pandemic actually proved our theory. It proved that people can be productive away from the office. It proved that you don't have to be tethered to a manager and babysat to be productive. And if we can empower people and look at results, and we can measure results of productivity, then that's what we should be concerned about. We could be concerned about them spending time with their families, the work-life balance. We heard people talk about, oh, I get to coach, you know, my son's soccer now, or I get to make dinner. You know, some people like to do that, or I get to do my laundry, you know. So those kind of things we started thinking about, or I like taking a nap. Okay, napping pods. I mean, we're thinking and we're trying to understand what it made a difference in being at home and what will entice them back to the workplace. Our leaders are coming to us and asking some of the wrong questions, I think. How can we force people back to the workplace? You shouldn't even be asking that question. What if we have everyone come back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? That's less flexibility than we had before. No one tracked when people came into the office or what hours they worked. And I, frankly, as a facility management group, have said, we're not tracking badge swipes or anything. We need to trust people. And so I think those are the discussions that we're having. And we are looking at workspaces and adjusting to some of the new needs that people want that entice them and make them want to come back. And I think the other thing from just real estate strategy in general, we're taking advantage for us of the market. We are getting ahead of some of the leases that don't expire yet, but it is tenant friendly right now. I mean, when office space is readily available and hard to lease, and some of those lease rates are going down because of that, we are revisiting some of that with the landlords and renewing where we think it makes sense, but talking about the rates and stuff and things like that. So we're jumping on things before, not tracing or not chasing after lease expiration, and also ensuring that we don't sign office leases that are 10 years, you know, shorter the windows, but opportunistically looking at what the market offers and taking a look at the portfolio from that perspective.
Great, thank you. So we're living in an environment right now where there's so much optionality in technology. And so Tracy, for your organization, how are you using technology when it comes to supporting the strategy around the future of work?
Yeah, so working for a tech company, if you want to have credibility with the C-suite, data is king, right? That is what they trust. And, you know, going back to your point as well, there's all of this groundwork that when we're taking this data and we're using new tools and we're trying to get C-suite buy-in, there's all of this groundwork that we should have done before. You know, in the past, I've seen real estate leaders go in and they're talking to people that they're trying to engage about square footage and leases. And I don't mean to insult anyone in here, but it's like the boring thing ever, isn't it? Even to me as a real estate person. And what we should be doing is sitting down and talking to them about what's important to them, the jobs to be done, what they're trying to achieve, and aligning people around goals. And so back to tools, like some of the things that we have been using. So for example, Robin, I think Robin are here. Is the Robin in here? You there? Hi. So Robin, we've worked really closely with. So we used Robin for our conference room bookings, and we've worked really closely with them around our needs and expanding it to be able to book desks as well. So that's been really great, because what we've done is rather than blow up our spaces, you know, we're all really challenged with, we were talking before around budgets, and it's not a great time to be asking for a lot of budget and changing up our spaces. So what we've done is designated different spaces in our areas through our technology. So some areas are collaboration spaces, some are social, some are focus. And the Robin tool, which allows people to book spaces and book desks, allows us to understand which spaces are being leveraged most, which are the most popular, which are the least, how does that change from office to office. And that really helps us start to understand how people need to use our spaces. So that's been a really, really great way for us to use new tools. We also use density, so that shows us which times of the day people are going to which spaces and how many people, and we can really track how they're being utilized. Obviously, we work really closely with our people analytics team. So real estate and workplace within Twitter is part of the people team. We actually moved from the finance team to the people team just before the pandemic, actually. And that, looking back, has been a really great move for us. Not just managing people through COVID, which was a hugely traumatic time for employees to go through, just being really close to those people experience folks, but just working with them on things like pulse surveys and understanding the things employees say they're going to do, and then we can measure them against what they actually do when we look at the data coming through. And for us, it's really not about the big brother, is someone coming in 2 days a week or 3 days a week. It's really about understanding when they come in, what is it they're doing, and what is the sorts of spaces and what times of day, and how do we support that moving forward. And like Terry said, you know, we look at the employee sentiment, and we do free food as well, and it's pretty good food, but it's not the top reason why everyone comes in. The top reason why everyone comes in is for team collaboration and to see other folks in the office. And the things like food, the free food program is awesome, because when people are walking through our spaces, they have those casual interactions when they do come in. The people that they're not booking meetings with, but they love running into because they get a different perspective around Twitter. So our office, the use of our spaces has changed. But at the same time, when we look at our pulse surveys, folks also tell us that it's not just for social and it's not just for the collaboration side of things. We also have people who say, look, you know, I just want separation of my house and my home and my work. You know, it might not even be that they live in a small apartment or somewhere where it's noisy and there's construction going on. Some people just like having that physical separation of their home life and their work life. And so by leaning into choice and giving people options around whether they want to work from home or whether they want to come into the office, we just feel like that captures, you know, most of our folks at Twitter. I mean, I look at my own habits. Monday and Friday, I work from home because I'm either back-to-back on a Monday on calls. On a Friday, we do no meetings Friday because we know that's become a thing during the pandemic where everyone had too many meetings. So we want to be able to clear that calendar. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm in the office and, you know, kind of connecting with folks and looking for myself as a head of real estate, how people are using the spaces, how our leaders are modeling behaviors. So it's a real learning curve. I was hoping to come these last 2 days and hear the holy grail around like what exactly we should do. But I just feel like we're all in this massive experimentation period right now.
Okay, thank you. Relina, how about at Salesforce? How are you guys using technology to support?
Very similar to Tracy, but I'm going to take a different angle to it. So first, obviously being a tech company, we lead with data because that's how we get executives at the table to really spend time with us. And some of the things that I've only been there for about 100 days now, we've really been trying to do is create portals where executives can go in and actually see some of their own utilization, badging data, obviously senior executives in an anonymous way by function, so we're not calling anyone out. But I think this really empowering execs with data has been incredibly interesting at Salesforce because we're getting intelligent questions. Obviously, when senior executives travel the world, our co-CEOs, we see these huge spikes, and they're like, Sao Paulo was packed. Yeah. We need more space. And I was like, you were in Sao Paulo doing it all hands that day. Of course it was packed, right? So taking a step back, the way we're thinking through it is people, place, and technology. We need to use technology, and we use a lot of Slack to inform folks which days of the weeks we're coming in. I'm on a very similar schedule to Tracy. Monday, Fridays, back-to-back calls. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, really walking spaces, looking at how our interns, what we call future force, use the space, hack the space. We do not do food. We're in downtown areas, and we really want to support the local community. I came from a culture that did a lot of food, and there are impacts on the local community. So I feel really grateful that Salesforce does not do food. It's also something I don't have to worry about. We do events, and we do culinary for events, so very event-driven culture. And for that, we really make sure that we measure events, we tie it to revenue. There's a lot of thought being put into that. But back to that people, place, and technology, we are re-educating folks how to use our spaces. Like everyone else, we have more collab space. But we also have come up with ideas, which other folks are doing, like libraries, where you go for heads down space. You might not have the best work environment at home. You come in for heads down, even though I don't come in for heads down space, right? So really meeting people where they are, being incredibly inclusive, and I think this re-educating folks how to work. It's okay to be louder near the workplace. I think we've got into this culture where we have to book a conference room for a meeting. And what we're trying to do is drop technology in with soft seating between desks so folks can collaborate quickly and then go back to doing their work, and it's okay. We in workplace are being incredibly thoughtful about the workspaces that are being used with sensors, with observation for leaders that are trying some different things. We are really encouraging experiment and learning. So even if we have a hunch it's not going to work, we work with the leader and try it, because that way we have their buy-in. And I think ultimately Slack's been incredibly helpful for us in terms of finding people, in terms of making sure that folks know when folks are coming in. I notice when I put in the days I'm coming in, which are pretty the same days most weeks, I see folks coming around those days as well. So it's just using people, place, and technology. That's kind of our framework to constantly be thinking about. But tech is really important, and I don't think senior leaders are going to take you seriously unless you come in with really intelligent data and insights. So having a point of view around the data.
Great. Alana?
Yeah, so very similar, I think. Obviously, we're using Zoom platform, which is, as Robin has, conference room booking tool. We can see data on what types of spaces people are using. I think leveraging, you said Slack, we leverage chat. But I think teams have now organically started creating their own team engagements. And they're using, before, I think the pandemic, people would say, oh, hey, like I'm going to be out this Friday, or now they're saying I'm actually going to be in. So they're starting to use our tools to communicate more. Obviously, we have digital signage. It's a great way for us to promote any Diwali events or we've become big in the event space, right? This has totally changed during this time. So just really promoting what's happening, which teams are sitting where. Neighborhooding we are not doing because we didn't want 3 people sitting in one neighborhood and 5 over across the floor. So it's just organically, people are starting to make that happen. We have workspaces, which is the Zoom platform tool for booking a desk. You can see who's going to be in. You can order your lunch. Because people sometimes just come in just to use a space or use a Zoom room, and then they leave. So we can actually collect the data around food service and things like that. But one key thing that I think we did during the pandemic is we were in the process of building out our first ever executive briefing center, experience center. You come in, host your big customers, take them through the journey of Zoom, show them the entire platform, not just video conferencing. And, that shut down, and we kind of were like, okay, we have to rethink this. What does this look like? And within 2 months, we cleared a floor that I had that I knew I probably wasn't going to need, and went virtual. And now we have 3 virtual experience centers that are highly used. They're overused. The team has had to grow substantially, but there's one in each region, and we're getting a lot of return on investment in a virtual aspect. So people are not getting on planes to go and have 3-hour meetings in San Jose or in Amsterdam. They can now do it from home and get the same experience. So I have 3 dedicated floors across the globe dedicated just to virtual. So it's a lot of different experimentation. We don't use sensors. I thought about it a little bit, but our real estate portfolio is not that big. And I really want my team, I encourage them to go sit in the lunchroom. I sit in different, we have dedicated spaces that are just for collaboration. Encourage them to go and sit in there and listen to people and hear what they're saying. And we do surveys, of course, as well, and focus groups every 3 months. And yeah, so lots of experimenting for sure.
Great, thank
Can I
you.
just add one
Yeah,
thing
sure.
as well? The data is one piece of it, right? Having a point of view is another piece of it, and being able to provide the context too is important. So you can have all of the how many butts, whatever we say here, butts in seats. But also, you may use that office for other things, bringing in customers, bringing in partners. Is it really important for hosting community events? There's a whole other value proposition of your offices on top of just sitting there and doing work or folks collaborating. Salesforce does a ton in the community. We welcome in partners and clients, and I'm sure we all do that. So there are other things that your leadership probably don't have as much insight to or don't come to mind when they look at the raw numbers. That said, it is really important to share them. Even if you don't like the numbers, you've got to share them, right? Because you've got to take your leaders on this journey of what is the next thing. And so every single week, I'm sharing the utilization of all our offices around the world with our C-suite, and some of the numbers are super low, but it's a time that we're all experimenting and working through together. So I think that transparency, if you can do it, is super important.
I think
Ingrid,
the translation too. I mean, I tell my organization we need to speak many languages. It's not because we're a global company, but the language to the finance community is different than the language to the HR community, is different than the language to scientists. And we have to take that data and we have to put it into, which I love someone talked about storytelling. We have to tell a story, and we modify our presentations to their goals. If production and operations is concerned about the cost of goods sold, I'm going to tell them how these metrics impact cost of goods sold and how we can make a difference, how costly dead space is to them, and how we can make a difference. If you talk to HR, it's a different conversation. So I think you have to speak the language and modify the story and draw people together in purpose, and they'll get behind it.
So we've talked a lot about the importance of data when it comes to helping leaders make decisions or helping us convince people of things. Relina, how are you thinking about collecting data from employees to learn what it is that they really want? We've heard organizations a survey has gone out. What are you doing with that information to really drive the decision around what is it that the employee wants? Because I think we know what the employee wants, but I'm not sure we actually do.
And I think similar to some of my other colleagues here, during the pandemic, RUS, Real Estate and Workplace Services, moved from the CFO to the Chief People Officer. I joke with the CFO because I feel I have a dotted line to the CFO because I get all the calls from the CFO around all the real estate.
You spend a lot of money.
Exactly, and all the real estate we have globally and how people are using it. But I think this connection with HR and RUS, or corporate real estate, is so important because we get different types of data. I shared that during the pandemic, this was really the brainchild of our co-CEO, Mark Benioff, was opening the ranch in collaboration with 1440 Multiversity in Scotts Valley, California. We survey folks coming in, coming out, new employees as well, and they feel much more connected to the brand, and they want to come into the workplace because they've been to the ranch. So it's not only collecting data in how folks are experiencing your workplaces. So we're being incredibly thoughtful of taking qualitative, quantitative. Terry, to your point, I talk to my team constantly, my leadership team, about being great storytellers and turning on our muscle around hospitality. Now, Salesforce, because of Mark Benioff and our founder, we've taken Dreamforce and brought it into the office, which is kind of a magical experience. But now we're taking it to the next level and really thinking about leading with data, telling the right story to the different audience, and CFOs and CPOs have different key care abouts. But really at the heart of it all is our employee, it's community, it's innovation, productivity, everything we've talked about today. And what was really appealing to me, which I think is interesting, is as we think through our stack of real estate, whether it's the ranch, whether it's the office, we have these Ohana floors, the top floor of every tower, which is for employees. When I walk around, I see folks bringing in their families, their kids are running around once in a while. Then I see it open to communities on weekends and nonprofits. And then at nights, we have a lot of client events in there also. So I think when I think of data and technology, I often pause and say, let's tell the story, let's show the story, and then obviously use data to kind of to guide that conversation. But technology is front and center of everything we do.
So I want to pivot a little there. We've talked, or it's been mentioned a couple times by the panelists around the collaboration with people or the HR teams. And in our last session, that question was asked as well. And most of the people who were reporting through people, that transition had happened during the pandemic. So Terry, we'll start with you, but how do you see that relationship, whether you report through people or not, but how do you see that collaboration continuing to grow as we think about the future of work and the employee experience moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because when people talk about the engagement of HR or people and culture with us in defining workplace experience, I think they're one voice, right? We have an HR partner who sits on our leadership team, so she's always been part of the discussions that we have and strategies that we're developing. But I think what was missing when I joined Roche and talked about visioning and talking to employees, there was this concern like, oh, if you ask employees what they want, they'll ask for things we can't deliver. And I don't agree with that strategy because we're adults. And yes, I think when I open a visioning center session, I say, I can't give you everything, but it's time for crazy talk. Let's just talk crazy. So my team and everybody knows crazy talk means put whatever you want on the table. And crazy talk leads to innovation. It really does. And more often than not, we're able to deliver what people want. So I think that if you really want to get to the core of experience, it's not the voice of one, it's the voice of many. What my research and development scientists are going to say makes a great work experience is going to be different than what the production folks need, and so on and so on. So not only is the engagement with them important to developing workplace experience, but it's what one of you mentioned, I think, was I asked the team to perch. I call it perch. Perch and watch. Body language. If we don't take the same seat on our campus every day and we go to different workplaces and we watch how people operate, you're going to see faces of frustration or happiness or collaboration that's working or frustration, right? Again, and those are the things we don't have to wait for someone to ask. We can take note of body language and how people are, engaging in the workplace, and we can make changes. We also develop a whole slew of different types of work and meeting space. They're not every meeting room the same. And then we watch which ones get booked the most, which ones are empty. Okay, we don't do that again. Right. I mean, because you learn, it's about experimentation. And that's how you get to real workplace experience, and by making yourself available. I used to say facilities was, we brought them from the boiler room or the basement to the boardroom. But part of that is also we created concierge at the desk. So our facilities coordinator doesn't sit in a facilities department, but sits at the reception. So anyone going by that has a question or needs something is now able to stop at the concierge and talk about it. And we set up at lunchtime desks just to be there, just to ask people how things are going. So I think being aware and having those discussions or Zoom calls or whatever it is, opening up so people see us, that's one thing I'm passionate about. We should be partners in the organization. We are not the police. And I tell my team, no one ever invites the police to the party. So stop telling them what they can, where, if they can eat at their desk, where they can park, telling them don't return to the workplace without washing your hands. Like, stop that. In fact, I pull down any sign that starts with don't. Because, and teach them a language of positive interaction. That's who we need to be to really capture what people need. And then I'll just speak in the Roche terms and end it with that. Why are we trying to prescribe without diagnosing? You don't give a drug if you don't understand what the ailment is. So we need to understand what people need, and then we can get to strategies to prescribe and deliver on what makes it a great experience for them.
Thank you, Terry. So Tracy, you guys have made that transition to work under people. So how have you seen the shift in collaboration?
Well, I mean, it's really amazing. So I'm part of the people leadership team. And so I'm working really closely with people analytics, the wellness team, talent mobility, and everybody that is like the whole journey of an employee at Twitter. And so really, I look at it as how can we enhance that experience, you know, and how can we build on our brand? One of the most important things for me when I came into my role leading real estate, which was, I actually got my role while I was on maternity leave. So I was like pretty impressed by Twitter and them asking me. I had a HR partner phone me up and say, are you going to apply for this? Are you going to apply for the lead role? And I was like, oh, I've just had a baby. And like, are you going to apply for it? And I was like, okay, right, they're trying to tell me something. And so it's been a really great experience. And to have that one foot in the finance side, because we were in that team, and have that credibility because we took the time to build the brand, share our goals and our principles and how we really approach taking on space and being very principled about it, but also forcing our way in, you know, being in those, we call them one team meetings, which are like the big global all hands, and really being the face of like looking after our employees during COVID as well, has really built a level of trust and a level of almost gratitude. I mean, we educated them. We said, while you guys were working from home, there's a whole load of facilities people who are still in the offices, looking after the mail, making sure the building's not leaking, making sure that when you do come back, it's safe and that you will have a really seamless experience. And so, you know, there was a lot of terrible things that came with COVID, but being able to build up the brand of the team and really show folks what we do has been huge for us to be able to get to know our employees as well, and for them to get to know us. And then we get to move to the people team and understand what people need day to day, what concerns them, understand about how they really want to stay with Twitter, but they need to move because maybe a member of the family's got a new job or they need to go care for a parent. And, you know, we don't want to lose people. We want to keep them. And so it's how can we add value and not be the naysayers and not be just known for fixing the aircon and the bathrooms, but actually having a voice at the table and making a workplace that everybody loves to come to. And that's by meeting your folks where they are and understanding what their needs are and listening to how those needs have changed. We all know, I think, from speaking over the last few days, but in general anyway, the genie's out of the bottle now. We can't say, oh no, everyone needs to come back to the office, because we know that there is a level of productivity even working from home, and people are able to now balance a bunch of the things they couldn't do before. But that does not mean that the office, it doesn't have, you know, a special use, isn't somewhere where folks can come together and collaborate. Our top thing, remember, from our survey was seeing my colleagues and friends in person. And when I look at the demographics of the people who are coming into the office, it's people just out of college who are wanting to build up their relationships. Maybe they've moved to a city because they still want that city life. And then the other end of the bookend is maybe it's empty nesters who decided, I want to come in and see people day to day. And so how do we make that experience great? We make that experience great by talking to the people that sit down with them and listen to them moaning or happy about things, and that's your HR partners. So I'm really happy to be part of our people leadership team and to be working really closely with them. They have an awesome PhD level people analytics team who are working really closely with us on everything future of work. But you only need to go on LinkedIn and look at people like, I think, Nick Bloom from Stanford, who's putting out all this information. You know, Darren's great talk this morning. So many things that we can learn from each other. And so I guess my question when we come out of this thing at the end is, how do we all continue to keep talking and sharing these things, you know?
Great, thank you. So Alana, when we think about this shift in how we're thinking about people and places and how work is getting done, do you think that it's going to change the skill set required of corporate real estate leaders and their organizations as we move
I
forward?
actually do. I think real estate's very transactional, usually built around a strategy on headcount and space and how people use it. And I think it was pretty cookie cutter before this. Now I think we need to really hone in on more experience, somebody that's agile. I think, thinking outside the box, being able to take leadership on those journeys, just not as transactional as it used to be. But I think also leading with care. I think we were very, like facilities, right? It's very reactive. Now we have to actually plan. We have to really, really be thoughtful about our moves and make the connection with people experience. Like I'm still under the CFO org. I haven't been as close with people experience ever in my career as I am now. So I think, they see a lot of value in us, probably more than they ever saw before, because we've really led the future of work strategy at Zoom. I think everybody was afraid to take that step and take the lead and put a stake in the ground. And we were like, no, we need to do this. We need to start being innovative. We need to earn that commute. We want to bring people together. So they've actually been partnering extremely well with us. I'm very thrilled about that. But I think as I look for future leaders, I think I am looking more for a strategic, innovative mindset and not just somebody that can run offices day to day.
Relina, anything to add?
I'll just quickly add exactly the same. I think the skill sets, tool sets, and mindsets have changed.
Yeah.
The pandemic has made us all as leaders think differently about what we want. I do think being part of employee experience and having it at the core makes me think about what kind of leaders that I need to be hiring. Data scientists, there are certain things in people analytics, similar to Tracy, like I'm working with PhDs who are phenomenal at what they do, and take our data and people data and come up with the most interesting things that we probably won't be able to do by ourselves. So it's kind of a very similar kind of strategy. We're moving from transactional to be much more solution-oriented and kind of different skill sets and tool sets on the team to support us going forward.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about this. I'm like, me. Yeah, because I personally, I don't think it's changed. I think we should have, and always, from my perspective and my teams, I think we always should have been more strategic, more visionary. We should be explorers. We should be experimenters. And that's where the true value in a CRE comes to an organization. That's when we get invited to the table. I think chasing lease, expiration dates and reacting to work orders and that, anybody can do that. But when we go further and we start, that's the fun part too. And when we start asking what if, when we stop living in what is and what was, and I can tell you, it drives me crazy when I have some of my engineers that have been there for 30 years, like, we've always done this. That drives me crazy. What is and what was is not innovative, and it is not exciting, and it doesn't bring us to the future. Living in the world of what if we tried something different? What if this occurred? What if that? The world of what if is what leads to innovation. And that's where we can bring value to the industry and to the world of workplace. So I think that's always who we should have been. I think we have to be catalysts, not just dealing with change. We have to be catalysts for change. If we can't continue to change and evolve, workplace strategy should never be an initiative as a result of a pandemic. It is something that is always evolving, right? That's the world. And that's the approach that we have to take. And anybody that wants to sit in what is, quite frankly, I don't have room for them on the team. And I think the other difference is during the pandemic, just one example, we were starting to build a production facility in Cape Town, South Africa. It was very controversial at the time, almost zero water, rolling blackouts. During the pandemic, we told a story to the operations organization and said, this is a site we should build. We ran into corruption. We ran into taxi wars where we couldn't get people to the work site. We ran into the pandemic. And through all of that, We delivered the project on time, and we delivered it $10 million under budget. And that's because a team came together, and not only a team, the government, landlords who we walked away from when there was kind of some, not really upfront stuff, and we said we don't play that game, but we got the officials, we got the GCs, we got the attorneys, we got the janitorial and the people who laid tile and all of those things behind this vision of this great place that could deliver patient product around the world. And when we closed that project, if you look at the kudos board, what that meant, everybody felt feeling like they had purpose in delivering something, made that project highly successful. And that's because we had a vision and we came together and we collaborated and we influenced the direction of the project. We didn't wait. And I think that's the type of teams that we need to build within the industry to be highly impactful and respected. We can earn a place at the table. We don't have to wait, right? Mm-hmm. Because once people trust you, it doesn't end. So I think it's always been the journey that we're on, and we have a lot of opportunity to make a difference.
So in one of the last sessions, we were surveyed and asked what was the reason for returning to the office, or for the office, for people going to the office. And one of the words that was repeated the most, came up the biggest on the Wordle, so to speak, was culture. And so as we think about the shift in work, how are we thinking about culture, and how does CRE support the cultivation of culture in the workplace? And we can start with Tracy on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a massive opportunity, and that's one thing that I've been saying to my team is like, don't be afraid. It's easy to be afraid when things are uncertain, but we should look at this as a massive opportunity for our team, not only to increase our skill sets, but also to do new things and break new ground. And so one of the things we've been doing, and because we're on the people team, is look at ways that we can be more inclusive. It's really important that we are diverse and we're inclusive. It's proven that companies are stronger when they're more diverse and inclusive. And we're a global company. And so I think about how we used to work before the pandemic and what we were trying to move away from as a company, actually, by being more diverse and really being stuck on time zones, and only certain people could come to the table at certain times. And so we've been really leaning into asynchronous work. And why is that great? Well, I mean, it's great because it means if someone's not in that time zone, they can still participate, they can still put their ideas across. But it's not just about time zone. I'm an extrovert, definitely. I feed off seeing people. But my husband is probably what you call an extroverted introvert. And so he'd much rather go into a doc and put his opinions there and put his thoughts there. And people process work in different ways. And so I think that for our culture, we've talked about being diverse and inclusive. We've looked at how we do diverse hiring slates, but our practices have changed through the pandemic to become more inclusive. And so leaning into that asynchronous work. Before the pandemic, if we were going to have an all-hands meeting, and it was a global all-hands meeting, we would all pile into our commons in San Francisco. And, I started actually in our Dublin office. Amazingly, I'm not American, can you tell? But we would all pile into the commons, and then all these other officers would dial in, and they'd see these little ants on the screen, and they couldn't really ask questions. And now we do it all virtually, and we haven't changed that. Yes, we have what we call local tea times, where the offices themselves will get together and go into the offices in person, and we'll do certain events at certain times to bring folks together. But when it's a big company meeting where everybody wants to be there and everyone wants to ask questions, we rotate the times that we do it, and people get on Slack. And it doesn't matter if you're a leader of the company, someone who's just started, everybody's in there asking questions. And I think this whole level playing field idea is super important for the inclusion and diversity piece. So I would say from a cultural perspective, it's made us stronger, I think. It's made voices that maybe we didn't hear before a lot louder. And it's made people feel like if you come to Twitter and you work at Twitter, then you get to work on some great projects, regardless of where you're sitting, regardless of sitting in an office or being at home. You have opportunities to great career options, even if you're at home or in the office, and you have the same access to the culture. And I think that's really important. And of course, our leaders are modeling it. Some days they're in the office, some days they're working from home. So it's almost like, even though we don't want to still have to do that permission thing, people do take their cues. So yeah, I think just through the asynchronous work and just making more of a level playing field. It's really impacted our culture in a positive way.
Ilana, how about at Zoom?
The same. I think it's. I mean, I'm going to sound like I'm bolstering the platform, but I am. Like it's. There are certain things that work better virtually because everybody is working the same way. And I think, Zoomtopia, we did that a couple years, right? It was the best turnout that we had when we did it all virtual. And this is the first year we're going back in a hybrid. And people are starting to register more now, but we have ton of registrants that are doing it virtual because people can't get on planes. People don't want to take that travel budget and spend the time to go do it. So I think we've learned a lot about what works virtually, what works hybrid. I think we're going to continue to monitor that. But same with our all hands. It's very important that everybody does it virtually because it is an even playing field. Some people go into the office, but we've kind of really, really strongly encouraged that you join remotely for sure.
So Relina, when we think about engagement, how are you guys approaching that differently now that work has changed a little bit and the way that we're communicating together has changed? How are you guys approaching that?
So couple of things. I think first and foremost, I think our workplaces are a huge part of our culture and brand, not just for employees, but for clients, for the community. So I think that's always been something that kind of front and center. I think what's changed is we've really been thoughtful around co-creation and collaboration like a lot of our peers. I personally don't think we're still very good at async work in general. I think we talk a lot about it, but to be really good at it is literally Tracy and I saying that we're not going to work on just headquarter time zone. You've got to let people work in their time zone. So I think there's a lot of work and training that still has to be done. We're thinking a lot about the role of managers and how that impacts employee experience and how that impacts culture. We know in tech companies, there is so much of what we call, whether it's Meets or Zoom, there's so much switching, right? You just switch your Zoom and onto a new company. So I think what I feel grateful for is we've always been incredibly thoughtful about differentiating our culture from a lot of other companies. Now we're using the pandemic as an opportunity to absolutely be much more inclusive. Even as we're returning to work, we keep thinking about what are we breaking? We keep talking to our ERGs. If we're encouraging people to come back, are we breaking something and now not being inclusive and not being focused on equality, et cetera? So I think this concept of not having the answers, deep listening, being thoughtful around what are you trying to solve for, because we're not going to solve for everything. But we think that's really important to what differentiates Salesforce and our culture. And obviously, place is a huge part of it, but it's more than place as well.
Terry?
Yeah, I don't believe in engagement, but no, I think you've all heard. Engage. I think that it's so important, and there's so many facets of it. I mean, when we're building a building in Tucson versus Cape Town versus Boston, if you don't engage locally with city officials, permitting, all of those folks, with the individuals themselves, if you think it's a one-size-fits-all, you'll get it wrong. And I've had these discussions. If we built the Bay Area buildings in Tucson where people come to work in boots and cowboy hats, we'd get it wrong. We looked at the Cape Town project, the most diverse workforce I've ever seen, and it was really important in the engaging and understanding from everybody. We did a lot of discussions there to get it right and to build and embed in that site the culture and things that really are inspiring to that demographic. But I think what's really important in our industry at this point, there's a lot of things we're facing. What's really haven't heard a lot about, but is daunting for us, is we talk about modifications and changing some of, there's a lot of work that happens with renovating our spaces and such, but that requires CapEx. And we are in the most challenging market to compete for CapEx within our industries than we've had in years. With the cost of goods going up and with the cost of resources going up, the cost of goods sold is going up in production facilities. And there's this rush also from the R&D groups to develop products faster. So now we're competing, now we're competing with those folks for CapEx. So we have, and I assure you, production efficiency and R&D is going to win that battle, right? We'll still tell our stories and the return on the investment. But we're in this place where getting the CapEx to actually do all these great things we're talking about is going to be challenging in 2023. And I think our engagement in having the discussions with our landlords, with developers, with other CREs, with the brokerage partners, with the people in the industry that we have here, and taking advantage of those lessons that you've learned and the things that you know, and really bringing them back to the workplace is going to be critical to us being able to move forward with all of this great innovation and these ideas we have in a very challenging economic environment. And so I think those are some of the challenges that this engagement goes far beyond, right? Just engagement within our organizations. The value proposition is what we're doing here today.
Great, thank you. So we're about 2 minutes between you and a break, so we'll open up for a question or two, and then we'll let everyone break for dinner.
Well, I guess we can bring the questions to the party later and have it over some drinks. But I'd like to take the time to thank you guys. This was an excellent conversation to close out the second day of Workspaces.